We're now in term 4. We are going to be looking at data science. We've got quite a big lesson today. So the lesson is going to be on the Google Classroom in the usual fashion, and the slides are attached and a video that I'm recording now. So we're going to start off looking at the slides. So we've been given some data here, and we're being asked what is the data showing us. Okay, now in the classroom there are a lot of resources, and a lot of these are spreadsheets. I've opened them all up. So this one is here, and here is the data. Now I had a look at this, and I was seeing sort of locations, temperatures, and then Surviv, which I thought might be survivor, which is fairly ominous, and the number just going down and down and down and down. And so I wasn't really sure what this was telling me, so I went and looked ahead, and we'll talk about that in a second. But there's definitely a kind of sense that we're losing people here. The number of survivors is going down. I wasn't sure what A and R meant, but we'll see later what that was. But does this data tell us a story? So we're going to be looking at defining what is meant by data science, and we're going to be looking at how visualizing data can help us. So this is not visualized, this is just the raw data. We're going to look at some visualizations which can help really paint a much clearer picture of what's happening. And then we're going to be using a really cool online tool to look at some data. So what is data science? Data science is looking at large data sets and trying to understand what's going on and gaining insights to make decisions. It's all about making better decisions based on what we're observing. So that's basically what data science is. Huge topic in the world, because so much data is being generated, because so much of what we do is being monitored, that it can then be used to target, make decisions. So the example we were given was the Joseph Minard visualization, and it relates to a Napoleon's march on Russia in 1812. And so the numbers themselves are pretty hard to interpret. I saw survive, I thought that might be survivors, but I wasn't really sure what that meant. But Joseph Minard created a visualization, and here it is. So it's actually a map, and it's got then the data visualization kind of put on top of the actual map. And so the gold sort of browny line is the army marching, and it starts off really thick because he's got how many people has he got? He's got 340,000 troops at the start, and every time some of them go off in a different direction. Not sure what that's all about. Maybe they got hungry. But every time it gets narrower, we're losing people, right? So here, some go off there, some go off here. Perhaps there's some other objective they need to fulfill. But here, it's getting narrower, but they're not going anywhere. They're just dying, I imagine. And it just gets narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower until they get to Moscow, and they just don't really have enough people to kind of win. And so then the black line is the retreat. And again, even in retreat, it's getting narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower. Until here, where they kind of hook up with these guys who are also retreating. And then we lose a load at this river crossing, and this is the amount that actually make it back home. So there's temperature kind of visualized on there, but this is a very famous visualization. But the visualization tells a much better story than the raw data does, and this is kind of a common theme. Yeah, there's the river crossing, like losing a bunch of people there. So that was that one. So the next one we're going to look at is a visualization by a man called John Snow in the mid-1800s. There was a big outbreak of cholera, and it was widely believed that cholera was caused by air pollution. John Snow attempted to visualize the data of the cases to figure out if that was true and try and disprove or prove, well, just try and figure out what the truth of the matter was. So here is his map of Soho. And what he's done is he's just put dots wherever there was a case. Okay, so more dots equals more cases. And you're going to have a look at this and answer the questions on the worksheet. So let me just hop over to the worksheet. So this is the A3, no it isn't, A2 worksheet. So in the classwork, you've got A2 worksheet. I appreciate there are a lot today. And you're given this map. Now it's quite zoomed out. It's kind of hard to read. from that distance, but they've got a zoomed in version here. So I think here's where you want to be looking at. So what conclusions can you draw from looking at the map? So I'm looking at this thing thinking, well, there's clearly a bit of a hotspot here, and there isn't really many cases around here. And so I'd have thought air pollution would be a bit more evenly distributed. It does seem like there's some kind of central cause going on here. And that's probably all I could say just looking at that, to be honest. But if I zoom in here, they've got, what have they highlighted that isn't anywhere else on the map? And it's highlighting the pump. And so just the idea is, and this is just like a water pump that people could rock up and kind of pump some water into a bucket or just to drink or whatever. And so that's where that was, and he's marked that on the map. And the idea is that you draw some conclusions based on all these dots being kind of clustered around this pump. Okay, so have a look at that, fill in the worksheet as best you can. And now I'm going to go kind of through the answers basically. So Jon Snow used this visualization to prove his theory that the deaths were related to the pump rather than by air pollution. So if you imagine everyone just believes, well, it's air pollution, that's just kind of a done deal. And then he's like, well, look, no, clearly not, because if you look at the data in its visual way, it just becomes very clear that there's something wrong with that pump. And that helped. He convinced them to remove it, and many lives were saved, apparently. But yeah, because of the visualization, if you just had those as a sort of raw data, it'd be very hard to demonstrate. But visualizing it made it very obvious what was going on. But it's not necessarily, it doesn't tell you what's wrong with that pump, or it doesn't really tell you kind of why the pump or anything about it. But because it just points at it, that can be enough to make a decision. So we're now going to look at something a bit more modern. We're going to be looking at some TV programs, some DataRat TV programs. And the aim is to visualize some data using this online tool. So datarapper.de, if you go to that website, it will present you with the sign in. And what you can do is down at the bottom here, you've got sign in with GitHub, Google, Microsoft. So if you sign in with Google, which is what I recommend you do, I've already done this. It will ask you for to confirm your account, but I've done this already. So I'm signed into DataRapper with Google, and now I can start playing around with it. So we are in activity 3. So I'm going to hop over to here. You've got activity 3. You've got the resource, which is the CSV, and you've got the worksheet, which is what you're going to edit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and do this now. I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy, I didn't mean to do that. I'm going to copy this data, and Control C, actually maybe I'll just show you, copy, and I'm going to make a new chart. So I'm going to make a new chart here, and upload data. Now it does have an import Google, but then sharing is a bit of an issue. So I'm just going to copy and paste the data table. I'm going to paste the data table in there, and you can see it's kind of done its best. So now I'm going to proceed, and it's kind of just going to parse the data and sort of show it back to me. I'm like, yeah, this looks good. It looks like it's managed to break things up properly. I'm not going to edit any of this. I'm just going to plow on. Now I'm going to look at some visualizations. So you can pick the different visualizations, and it's immediately going to try and make visualizations based on that data. Now, depending on the data, some of these visualizations are going to be more helpful than others. So the task is to have a look at the worksheet and try and provide some insights. So it's quite open-ended really, but you are going to be looking at the data, choose a chart type that you think tells you something, paste that chart into here. Now let's just try that. So I've got this one here. It makes it look like Coronation Street looks more popular than EastEnders. Yeah, fair enough, okay. But 66% of the programs are not these kind of mainline soap operas. Okay, that's fine. So if I choose that visualization, I'm now going to go to proceed. And I'm not going to edit anything at this point. I'm just going to leave that, just proceed. So I want to try and get it into something I can actually publish. All right, let's put it TV programs. There we go. That's a bit better, isn't it? Proceed. Okay, that's great. So select layout. We'll just leave that. That's fine. I'm hoping it's going to present me with some sort of image type of thing. Okay, there we go. Export or duplicate. So what I'm going to do here is PNG, and I'm going to just save it as a PNG and download that image. And that will there we go, it's now got that down there. And now, depending on what your operating system is, I should be able to literally kind of drag that in, and there we go, there's my visualization. Okay, so try and get your visualization into the worksheet. I'm going to undo that now, and then just explain what you've done and kind of why you chose it and what insights you've gained and why this might be useful. So if I'm looking at this one, actually I'll just do that again. What do I think? What have I gained from it? I'm not sure I'd choose this visualization. I mean, it gives you some idea of the popularity of things, but there might be more you could say. So have a look at some of the other visualizations. If I go back to visualize, I should be able to like change which one I'm looking at. Chart type, there we go. So have a play with that and try and fill that worksheet in. So infographics versus data visualizations. So data visualizations refer to visual representations of data, but they're quite a sort of pure conversion from one to the other. Whereas infographics they're visual representations, maybe with pictures, and they might kind of reflect patterns and help tell a story. They might include visualizations, but they are sometimes a little more abstracted away from the actual data itself. Whereas a data visualization is literally some sort of visual thing that is directly driven by the data itself. Here are some sort of creative examples that are kind of hand drawn. And there's a big area, it's a big kind of important area of computer science now, is working out how to visualize all this data to make it understandable. So the homework, so if you have time, obviously there is no actual homework, but if you have time at the end of this lesson period, you can go and have a look at this. You are given some data, if I look here, about some planets, and just play around with that tool. So for the data wrapper tool, if I do a new chart now, we end up with loads of half-done charts. Copy and paste it. So I'm going to copy and paste that in. I'm going to go through it. And yeah, it looks like it's parsed that correctly. You might end up with the right mess here if it wasn't happy with what you pasted in, but as you're pasting in from Google Sheets, probably going to be fine. So what's going on here? Let's have a look at some of these. Just have a play around with this. Pick one that tells you something. And so explain the data you visualized. What insights have you gained? And who might this information be useful to and why? Okay, really, really open-ended in terms of what you could write there. Just have a bit of a think about it. But the whole idea of today is understanding that there's all sorts of raw data that's being recorded. People use it to inform decision making. And next lesson we'll be looking at larger kind of global data sets and how data collection and storage has changed as technology has advanced. And there we go, that's it.